At one point in her career, Amy Schumer was arguably the biggest female comic in the world, selling out arenas and headlining blockbuster comedies. But somehow, in just a few short years, she managed to burn it all down her long trail of disturbing and problematic behavior. Exposed the cracks in the politically correct woman empowering feminist image she had worked so hard to build, and it wasn't long before her massive ego and her allergy to taking accountability became more public. If you yell out, "I'll say, throw it out, I'm gonna throw it out, okay." So everybody point to the people booing, turning her from an okay comedian to one of the most hated comedians of the modern era. In no time. And that's our extreme dislike for Amy Schumer. God bless. Amy Schumer is like the common evil that unites the world. Hi, I'm the internet anarchist. I create weekly YouTube documentaries, and today we're diving into the self-inflicted downfall of Amy Schumer, how she built an audience of millions with her bold and fearless comedy, only to betray that same audience through hypocrisy and ego, and most importantly, how all of this could have been avoided. If Amy had just learned to let go of her pride and stopped playing the victim every time she got called out. Though the only call out I'm interested in is calling you out for not subscribing, so hit that subscribe button and let's get on with the video. Now, before everything came crashing down, Amy Schumer was just another aspiring performer trying to make her mark. She actually started out as a theater actor, but by 2004, she had shifted to stand-up comedy, performing regularly across New York's comedy circuit, including the iconic Gotham Comedy Club. Her first real breakthrough came in 2007 when she appeared on the comedy version of American Idol called Last Comic Standing, where she made it all the way to the finals. This was her first exposure to a national audience, and even though she finished fourth on the show, her confidence and sharp delivery stood out to audiences, helping her earn a regular appearance on Comedy Central over the next few years. She gradually built her name on the comedy circuit as she made guest appearances on various talk shows. Hi, just saying hi. Great to see you as well. Poor choice of words on his part. I don't think so. I didn't mind this terminology at all. And even landed a minor role in the HBO series Girls. But Amy didn't really break into the mainstream until September 2011, when she appeared on the Comedy Central roast of Charlie Sheen. But no, I mean, Charlie, you get a bad rap, but you're just like Bruce Willis. You know you were big in the 80 seconds. And now your old slot's being filled with Ashton Kutcher. Even though she was still a relatively unknown comic at the time, her fearless and unapologetically dark set completely stole the show, exploding as the episode's main attraction, and collecting over 10 million views on YouTube alone, capitalizing on this surge of newfound fame. She unleashed her debut stand-up album that very year, quickly followed by a Comedy Central special in 2012. The triumph of both these ventures catapulted her into her very own television series, Inside Amy Schumer, in 2013, which proved to be yet another massive success, securing an 80% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes and 7 out of 10 on IMDb. Her raw, unapologetic brand of comedy immediately made her infamous. I see some dude in a full blackout just walking at me like a zombie, just pointing at his own junk like, "Here." I'm like, "I'll get us a cab." She fearlessly delved into controversial subjects like sexism, body image, and gender dynamics with a level of audacity few comedians possessed at the time. How about just backing off this whole no thing for now? I know this, I know we've been through it, and I know we have a daughter, okay? I know that. I love her, but I am so tired. I don't know why, but I am, you know? And this completely unflinching approach cemented her reputation as a standout voice and established her as a so-called feminist icon in the industry. By 2015, Amy Schumer had reached the absolute summit of her career with her major Hollywood debut as both writer and star in Trainwreck, a film that became a colossal box office smash. This transformed her into a household name and officially cemented her as the highest paid female comedian in the entire world. But just as Amy ascended to the peak of her power, the meticulously crafted public image began to splinter, and the very audacity that made her a star was poised to become the catalyst for her spectacular downfall. That same year, The Guardian published a piece titled Amy Schumer, Comedy's Viral Queen, and although the article largely praised her lightning-fast rise and comedic triumphs, it also dragged something into the light that most fans had conveniently ignored until then. We're talking about her overtly prejudiced remarks that went far beyond the realm of simple jokes, from branding Latina women as unstable to stereotyping Latino men as sexual deviants. The article dissected how this type of humor was a blatant contradiction to the progressive, feminist brand she had built her entire empire upon, noting things like, While it's impossible to deny Schumer's incredible talent, the material that doesn't get shared on feminist Facebook feeds the next day does not hold up well to critical examination. For someone so acutely aware of social conventions, Schumer has an astonishingly large blind spot concerning race. And while Amy could have simply offered a graceful apology for these jokes, she arrogantly rejected any form of criticism, posting a tweet that proclaimed, "I am a comedian. I delight in portraying the girl who, from time to time, says the most witless thing possible, and toying with race is something we're told not to do, which is exactly what makes it so thrilling for comedians. You can call it a blind spot for bigotry or just lazy, but you are incorrect. It is a joke and it is hilarious. I know this because people laugh at it." But this defense did almost nothing to cushion the impact. Luckily for her, the allegations barely made a dent in her seemingly untouchable career. The same, however, could not be said for her next public relations nightmare, which ignited on January 19th, 2016, when comedian Wendy Liebman fired off a tweet accusing Amy Schumer of lifting one of her jokes, declaring, "Between Amy Schumer doing one of my best jokes on her HBO special and this meme of my joke, I'm done with social media." She even included a clip of the joke in question. "Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I like it when the guy pays for sex. I mean that I am a good person, I swear to you. Like, I'm very old school. I think the guy should always pay on the first date for sex." And while legions of fans initially leaped to Amy's defense, dismissing it as a coincidence, the staggering similarity between the two bits quickly ignited a firestorm online. Things took a nosedive for Amy when, shortly after, another comic, Kathleen Madigan, also put her on blast, suggesting she had pilfered material from her as well. And, within a matter of hours of these claims, a damning video compilation started making the rounds online, offering cold hard proof of just how much Amy had allegedly taken from fellow comedians, Madigan included. So I get why poor people are fat, but Oprah, you're a billionaire. You have enough money to pay a man to stand there and literally slap stuff out of your hand before you put it in your mouth. Slap chef, slap chef. What's that? It's a new weight loss program that takes decision making out of the equation. How does it work? First, one of Slap Chef's world-class chefs makes you one of their signature dishes. Then, before you can say Slap Chef, they knock it out of your stupid mouth. Slap Chef, Amy Pisciatelli. Right. That's why men, if we love you, we dress you for other women, too. That's why we dress you, stupid, because we want another woman to look at you and go, "He's cute, but I can't fix all of this." You dress them like that so nobody else wants to have them. That's cool. And to Patricia Neal, you have a gorilla masker. Gorilla mask. That's you. You come in her face, right? And then take some pubic hair and throw it at her. There's the Abraham Lincoln. That's where he, the guy, trims his pubes, comes on the girl's face, and then throws the pubes so she has that facial hair. When played back to back, these jokes are practically identical, far too similar to be dismissed as mere chance. As the public outcry intensified, Amy finally appeared on the Jim Norton Advice show to plead her case. "I'm being accused of stealing jokes, and I felt compelled to address this to restore my reputation, because I would never engage in such behavior, and I never have." She swore she was completely unfamiliar with the work of these comedians, who she was accused of ripping off, stating, "Kathleen's a brilliant comedian. I have never once seen one of her specials. I'd never heard her perform that bit. I wasn't aware of Wendy until I was much older, so there's no way I would have caught her stand-up in the 90s. However, she claimed to adore her, and then insinuated that these female comics were merely envious of her meteoric rise to fame. I don't believe it's a personal attack. I just think it's challenging to witness someone else's success. And perhaps they single you out, you know? Maybe Tammy envisioned a completely different path for her own life, a different career trajectory, and seeing someone else thriving was just too much." This was arguably one of, if not the absolute worst, responses she could have possibly deployed in this scenario. Even a straight confession of theft would have been less damaging to her public image. And just as you'd expect, practically no one believed a single word she uttered. The video evidence was irrefutable, and her condescending tone just dug her into a deeper hole. Commenters piled on, saying things like, "Hearing this turned my stomach. There is zero doubt she lifted those jokes and, wow, she is unbelievably arrogant now." Countless moments in this interview are transparently false. Tammy Pescatelli also highlighted her sheer hypocrisy, stating more bluntly, "What has always been astounding to me is her claim to be a feminist, yet she exclusively poaches material from other female comedians. If we dare to call her out on it, we're labeled as jealouses or get career shamed. We want you to succeed, just do it with your own damn material. After this catastrophe, Amy's once pristine reputation was now permanently tarnished, and her persona as comedy's feminist champion began to disintegrate as the mask started to fall. People also began re-examining Amy's older work, and their discoveries would signal the end of whatever support Amy still had, like back in 2014 when Amy recounted a personal story about an intimate situation she had with a guy named Matt while speaking at the Gloria Awards and Gala, describing, "His face is kind of blurry, and his eyes look like they can't lock on me. He's actually trying to look at me from the side. He is absolutely hammered." She then proceeded to narrate the experience with graphic detail, repeatedly stressing just how inebriated he was the entire time. Back then, she told this as part of an empowering monologue about building self-worth and confidence. But when the public revisited it years later, they interpreted it through a profoundly different lens. Many observed that the man she was describing was clearly far too intoxicated to give consent, and that what Amy had painted as a clumsy hookup actually sounded like something far more sinister, with one post stating, "He was in no state to consent, and he was obviously impaired based on her own description." She brazenly admitted to taking advantage of a man who was inebriated, but does she even register the problem with that? For years, Amy paraded herself as a fierce critic of misconduct and a champion of the Me Too movement, so to hear her openly make a joke out of that very situation, a situation that embodied the exact behavior she condemned, felt not just disturbing, but repulsively hypocritical, especially from such a vocal supporter of the movement, particularly when it was popular, which reveals her not just as a hypocrite, but something far more problematic. Unfortunately, this was far from an isolated incident. Amy Schumer would continue to shamelessly contradict the very values she claimed to uphold. In fact, this grotesque pattern of hypocrisy can be traced across her entire career, including the time Glamour magazine featured Amy's name on a special cover. It was a plus-sized issue, alongside Ashley Graham, Melissa McCarthy, and Adele, intended to celebrate women who were fashionable at any size. But Amy had a massive issue with being labeled plus size, writing, "Plus size is considered size 16 in America. I go between a 6 and an 8. She complained that Glamour magazine put her in their plus size only issue without her knowledge or consent, and that it simply doesn't feel right to her. She even insinuated it could negatively impact young girls. And while a segment of her followers agreed with her, many others immediately spotted the gaping holes in her argument. If there's nothing wrong with being plus-sized, why would the label be harmful to young girls? It was a classic, fat is beautiful, but don't you dare call me fat scenario. Even Ashley Graham, who was featured alongside Amy in the magazine, saw the issue. She criticized the contradictions, saying, "I can see both sides, but Amy talks about being a big girl in the industry. You thrive on being a big girl, but when you're grouped up in with us, you're not happy about it." That to me felt like a double standard. Although Amy later replied to Ashley's point, saying, "I totally understand Ashley's feelings. I don't group myself in with her because she is unbelievably beautiful." Her statement once again dodged all real accountability, and this moment perfectly encapsulates the repeating cycle of Amy's career whenever she's confronted. Instead of reflecting or owning her contradictions, she deflects all blame to protect her public persona and ultimately her massive ego. This pattern was on full display in 2016. It was just weeks before the presidential election, and Amy was performing a stand-up show in Tampa, Florida, when events took a very unexpected turn. Right in the middle of her set, she paused the show to single out a member of the audience who was a supporter of Donald Trump. She began mocking him in front of the entire audience, all while claiming, "I appreciate you coming up. I am in no way trying to shame you. What is it you plan to sing? Okay, you can go have a seat now, so thank you. I appreciate that." Alright, we're not going to get any further into that. I sincerely appreciate it. That was just cool to hear. The one guy who doesn't come across like a complete psychopath? Why would you vote for that orange individual? Her comments hung in the air. Her question instantly provoked hostility from Republican supporters in the crowd, but instead of de-escalating, Amy doubled down, launching into a political tirade that only further incensed the audience. "I support Hillary because, I performed for her. I know, you're all here to have a good laugh. But at the end of the day, you pick your life. You pick the way you want to live it." The performance concluded with over 200 audience members walking out. Many of them later took to the internet to voice their anger. "Hey Amy Schumer, exclude the political commentary from your comedy shows. We came for laughs, not a political debate. We can switch on CNN and NBC for that. You ruined my entire night after I spent $300 on a comedy show. Then you veered onto a political tangent that was utterly rude and disrespectful." Admittedly, Amy has never hesitated to be political in her stand-up, but to personally berate a fan during a live show felt like a clear line had been crossed. This one moment, again, underscored her complete inability to accept criticism or disagreement without lashing out in return. Instead of even trying to see opposing viewpoints, she countered with personal insults, and in doing so, she cemented her image as a performer more invested in protecting her ego than in connecting with her own audience. However, the definitive breaking point would arrive just a few months later with the premiere of her Netflix special. Titled The Leather Special, it was surrounded by enormous expectations. Amy had reportedly secured a $13 million deal for the project. This cemented her status as one of the highest paid comedians on Netflix to this very day. Audiences expected something bold and new, and for Amy, this represented the perfect chance to reset her public image and finally overcome the controversies that had so badly damaged her reputation. But when the hour-long special finally debuted in March of 2017, it bombed spectacularly, earning thousands of one-star reviews on IMDb. And true to her nature, Amy rejected the criticism entirely. She began proclaiming that alt-right haters were the sole reason for the overwhelmingly negative reception, writing, "To anyone who reported that viewers are unhappy with my special, it would have been cool if you did a moment of research before posting. The alt-right organized trolls attack everything I do. And while there may have been some bad faith reviews, anyone who actually saw the special could tell the outrage wasn't purely political. The whole thing was just painfully unfunny," and trotted out the same exhausted gags about her physique and romantic history. And as if that wasn't already scraping the bottom of the barrel, she apparently couldn't resist lifting material for this special too. Yet, even after that disastrous Netflix special, Amy seemingly learned nothing from her mistakes, as just a year later, her next major endeavor ignited even more intense backlash, this time for being astonishingly tone-deaf and hypocritical. Her 2018 film, I Feel Pretty. The movie trailed a woman who sustains a head injury in a cycling class and abruptly starts to perceive herself as breathtakingly beautiful. What was marketed as an empowering comedy about self-confidence and body positivity immediately provoked criticism for achieving the exact opposite, as many viewers felt the film merely reinforced toxic beauty standards. It suggested that self-esteem could only be unlocked through a head trauma-induced delusion. As one baffled viewer put it, did Amy Schumer genuinely believe a film about a woman needing a severe blow to the head to feel confident in her own body would actually uplift people? So, it was hardly a shock when the movie was torn to shreds by critics, with some branding it the worst film of the year. However, when questioned about the negative reception, Amy once again resorted to her tired old deflection tactics. "I don't feel the pressure," she insisted. "And whatever they're expecting, it's not my responsibility, so I don't worry about it." Some people really projected what they felt onto it without even that information. The simple truth is that Amy is incapable of accepting her own failures. She is trapped in an endless loop of ego and denial, and by alienating the very audience that once supported her, she ended up demolishing the foundation of her own career. However, while every controversy up to that point had merely dented her reputation, her next public implosion would reveal her most repulsive side to date. After the conflict between Israel and Palestine ignited in October of 2023, Amy wasted no time in loudly and proudly declaring her support for Israel, all over her social media. But in doing so, she crossed a boundary that countless people found absolutely unforgivable. For example, on October 27th, Amy shared a cartoon on Instagram showing a pro-Palestinian protest, with individuals holding repugnant, fabricated slogans such as "Gaza's Jewish girls only in self-defense and proud of our martyrs." The post possessed a blatantly Islamophobic undertone and instantly triggered a firestorm of online fury. Comments poured in, reading, "Amy Schumer is utterly pathetic. She's gone full-blown racist and needs to be cancelled immediately. How unbelievably racist. This is vile, and as a Muslim myself, I am deeply hurt." Another noted that by sharing an image like this, she was actively fanning the flames of another contentious racial conflict. But as horrifying as that post was, it was just one of many that followed in the coming weeks. A number of Amy's social media updates were unmasked as being little more than crude anti-Palestinian propaganda, peddling dangerous falsehoods and stripping an entire group of their humanity. And when actor and YouTuber Asia Jackson called her out publicly, she remarked how utterly insane it was to her. How figures like Bella and Iggy had to walk on eggshells with their statements, while Amy Schumer could be so inflammatory and still have a career. Amy did not respond well to this. She went straight to Jackson's private messages, accusing her of anti-Semitism and doubling down on her own prejudice narrative. The public was absolutely disgusted by this, with one comment reading, "This blonde, blue-eyed millionaire just told a black Filipina to imagine feeling unsafe. Weaponizing anti-Semitism is so vulgar. The reason we despise you, Amy, has zero to do with you being a Jewish person and absolutely everything to do with your own bigotry." And to dig herself into an even more shameful hole, on a separate occasion, Amy tried to twist the words of Martin Luther King Jr. to justify her pro-Israel stance. She posted a clip of him speaking out against anti-Semitism, completely devoid of its original context, where he quoted his Jewish brothers and sisters telling him, "Amid anti-Semitism anywhere, we don't need your support. We have enough Jewish power to deal with this problem ourselves. I would still take a stand against anti-Semitism because it's wrong, it's unjust, and it's evil." This immediately blew up in her face when Dr. Bernice King, Martin Luther's own daughter, personally called her out for grossly misrepresenting her father's message, stating he also believed militarism, in addition to racism and poverty, were among the interconnected triple evils. "I am certain," she said, "he would call for Israel's bombings of Palestinians to cease and for hostages to be released." At this point, Amy's hypocrisy had been fully exposed. The very same racist undercurrents that were flagged nearly a decade prior in the Guardian article had now metastasized into blatant, undeniable bigotry. It completely tore down the facade of her so-called progressive persona. What started as mild criticism of a few questionable jokes had spiraled into a clear pattern of arrogance, ignorance, and a deeply rooted prejudice. And it was this exact pattern that ultimately demolished everything Amy had ever built. The catastrophic failure of her most recent movie, Kinda Pregnant, serves as just another nail in that very coffin. And it's definitive proof that whatever rapport Amy once shared with her audience has now completely evaporated. In the end, Amy Schumer's downfall was not a product of bad luck, so-called cancel culture, or internet trolls. It was the predictable result of a woman who refused to learn, who was more concerned with preserving her false public image than actually growing from her mistakes. And if only she had learned to accept criticism instead of constantly deflecting it, Amy Schumer's saga might have had a very different ending. Just like Morgs, who refused to mature alongside his audience and consequently lost everything, you can click the video on screen to dive deeper into that story.